Let me ask you a question before we begin today. Do you have any sense right now like you feel like you're just overloaded and you're overwhelmed with information in your life? Maybe you're having a hard time getting focused. You get distracted pretty easily. Maybe your concentration sort of suffers a little bit, your memory issues. Well, my guest here today is an expert on optimum brain performance, on learning quickly, and on maxing out your capacity to think and perform in your life. And it was really born out of some tragedy, out of some difficult events out of his childhood. He's turned those tragic events into becoming a world-renowned expert on brain performance. And today I'm really blessed because I've been chasing this guy for a while. I've wanted him to share his brilliance with you, the audience. And I'm grateful that he's here today because we're about to change your life and change the way you learn, think, and perform. So my guest today is the great Jim Kwik. Jim, thank you.
Ed, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this so much.
Me too, brother. We've had great conversations off camera, and I'm so excited because I know there's some shows I know that we do that are inspirational. And then there are shows I know that are going to inspire, but also by the end of the program, people's lives are just measurably better and they can perform better. And today is heavy note taking. If you're driving in the car, you're going to want to hear it, but you're going to want to get back and listen to the video or something too to write the notes down we're going to cover. So let's just go back just a little bit because I want to give people context because I really believe life happens for us, not to us. Ooh. And it's the meaning in our life of the events that happen to us, not the event, but the meaning we take from it. And so you've become this world-renowned expert. You've worked with the Dalai Lama, Richard Branson, right? Some of the highest profile celebrities in the world, most successful business people. But it's ironic that that was founded out of a boy with a broken brain, right? And that was because you had fallen and hurt your head, is that right? Like a 5-year-old? Or tell us that story real quick.
Yeah, it's funny, I just posted this on Instagram today. I said, difficult times could define us, they could diminish us, or they could develop us. You decide. Because ultimately we do decide. And if anything, we were taught a lie, that somehow our capabilities, our potential, our memory, for instance, our learning abilities, our intelligence is somehow fixed, like our shoe size. Wow. And it's absolutely not true. We've discovered more about the human brain in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years combined. And what we found is we've grossly underestimated our own potential, our own capabilities. So I recommend everybody takes notes because it boosts retention. People don't realize this. There's a learning curve, but there's also a forgetting curve. Science is saying that within 2 days, just 48 hours of listening to a podcast, reading a book, going to a conference, getting a coaching, 80% of it, up to 80% is lost.
Incredible.
And that's, as somebody who's investing time, energy, treasure into something, to lose all that, and so you want to be able to hold that on. Okay. And so one of the ways of doing it is by taking notes. And you're capturing your thinking. And even the greatest minds out there, they journal. They're always creative. You think about Leonardo da Vinci or Marie Curie, like they had their journals are worth fortunes.
Yes.
Right? And it's interesting asking this question, is it because they were geniuses? And when I say genius, I don't mean IQ. I mean they're exceptional in their field, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's technology. Is it because they're geniuses that they're taking all these notes? Or is it because they're creating all these notes that make them geniuses, right?
89% to 100% of the people listening to this struggle with remembering something basic like somebody's name.
Right.
Okay, so help us. So I know a little bit of that is what you just shared, that similar technique. So, in business alone, I can tell you, people's favorite topic is not their sports team or their children or anything. People's favorite topic is them, right? And one of their favorite sounds is the sound of you saying their name.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, most of you in a business setting, you know this, the minute you've heard their name, you've forgotten it, like those car keys that you lose periodically, but you lose their name constantly. And so this concept that you just shared about association with something you already know, is that one of the things you would do to remember a name?
It is.
Here we go, everybody.
So here we go. This is now, you want to take notes on this. I think one of the most important business etiquette, networking, skills, if there was one, is your ability to remember someone's name.
Yes.
Because how are you going to show somebody you're going to care for their business, their future, their finances, their health, whatever it is you have to offer them, if you don't care enough just to remember them?
Yes.
Because what's the message we send to somebody when we ask them for their name again 2 or 3 times?
You're not important.
You're not important, right? And that doesn't matter what you say after that. It's null and void, right? And so people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And here's the thing, and Maya Angelou said it beautifully, people won't remember what you say, they won't remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And that's going back to the emotion again, right? And so that caring is everything. Nothing sells like caring. The truth is, you could always remember that name.
Okay.
When you say you're not good at remembering names, that's not true. You just remembered somebody's name. Why? What's the difference? You're motivated. So the M in Max Out, the M stands for motivation.
Motivated.
And I would say, how do you do it? Ask yourself questions. You could elevate your level of motivation. You could ask yourself, what's my level of motivation to remember something, or to learn this, or to remember this name? You could say 0 to 10, give it a number, 5. Well, and here's this mind hack. How do I thought experiment, how do I make it turn it from 5 to a 7?
Okay.
What do I need to think about differently?
Okay.
Like how that person's gonna feel, or the business I could create for them, or just, learning these skills better, right? And I remember I was doing a training in Silicon Valley, and after I was done, somebody comes up to me, it was Bill Gates. And I asked him, like, if you could have any one superpower, what would it be? He's like, Jim, the ability to read faster. And Warren Buffett was like, I've wasted probably 10 years of my life reading slowly. And that's why reading and speed reading is so important, because people spend about 4 hours processing information a day. You think about all the emails and the business plans and the books and all the stuff you have to process.
Yes.
If you could just double your reading speed and go from 4 hours to 2 hours, you save 2 hours a day.
Whoa.
What's 2 hours a day over the course of a year? Actually, let's say you just save 1 hour a day. That's 365 hours a year. How many 40-hour work weeks? 9.
9.
2 months
Oh
of productivity,
my gosh.
more than 2 months of productivity is saving 1 hour a day on something ubiquitous like reading. So that's
Faster.
why we do so much, like for people are you watching this, I know a lot of people are entrepreneurs, they have teams. The biggest line item, right, is human capital,
Yes,
right, payroll.
for sure.
But if they're reading 4 or 5 hours a day, that means half of their salary is being paid to read. Right, so if someone's getting paid $80,000, $40,000 just to read. That's why we train at Nike and Google and General Electric and all these individuals, because that's the faster you could raise the collective intelligence of your team, the more that they can be competitive, right?
Yes.
And so going back to this, the M is motivation. So I would always say, if you want to learn something new, check in with your motivation, because here's the thing: all learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent. This is the thing. Information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. We know that.
Okay.
And we know this because ultimately the expert's not always the person on the podcast or on stage. You are your own expert. So genius leaves clues.
Okay.
Genius leaves clues all the time. So when somebody's exceptional in some area, there's a method behind the magic, including for your own self. Okay. So you don't remember all names, but you certainly don't forget all names. Now, go and deconstruct that, decode that. Usually the names you remember are names you're motivated to.
Okay.
You're somebody that is attracted to somebody that could be good for their business, right? So there's the emotion there. So emotion tied to information becomes a long-term memory. Because here's the thing, is there like a song or fragrance or food that could take you back to when you were a kid?
Absolutely.
Because information tied with that emotion becomes a long-term memory. But here's the thing, back in school, what was the primary emotion we felt? Boredom, right? Half the room is bored, the other half is confused. But on a scale of 0 to 10, what's boredom? 0.
0.
Information times emotion. If the emotion is 0, what's anything times 0?
0.
And you wonder why you forgot the presidents, the capitals, the periodic table, all the things we learned in school, because the emotion level was very weak.
Wow.
Right? That's why entertainment is so powerful, because education, maybe empowerment is here. Entertainment is way up here because of that emotion. Okay. Now, when the A, what I would say in Max Out, as people are going through this, just a simple acronym. The A, I would say, is accountability. Okay. Accountability. And this is, again, we haven't gone into the technique, but just owning it.
Okay.
Because most people are not responsible. They feel like, you know why? It's because we were trained that way. I get to work with Elon Musk, and I do trainings for him and SpaceX, the rocket science, a huge amount of information to be able to process, and be able to focus and so on, and be able to retain and apply. And he's building a world of electric cars with Tesla. He's building electric cars and spaceships going to Mars, right? But the vehicle of choice for education is like a horse and buggy. How people learn is like a horse and carriage, and you wonder why you're falling behind.
Right.
And here's why. We all grew up with the 20th century education. 20th century education prepared us for a 20th century world. And at the turn of the century, it was working in farms and factories.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, it trained us just to consume information. A teacher would lecture and you would just consume information.
Yes.
But the human brain does not learn through consumption, it learns through creation. Isn't it interesting that school would teach you what to learn, math, history, science, but important subjects basically, but not how to learn. What were the classes on creativity, imagination, strategy, problem solving, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, right? Where was the classes on listening,
right?
On emotional intelligence? Where were the classes on speed reading? Where were the classes on remembering? Right? Socrates says learning is remembering. Because nobody, like when I was at Google, they're like, Jim, but we have a search engine. Why do we need to retain all this information? Here's the reason, is because, I'll give you a couple reasons. Number one, your brain is like a muscle. It's use it or lose it. But people are suffering from digital dementia. This is the new term in healthcare.
Digital dementia.
Digital dementia, where we're so dependent on our smart devices. It keeps our to-dos. It does simple math for us. I went to dinner the other night, and it was 10 of us, literally 10 of us. The waiter comes with the check, and half of the 10 people pulled out their phones to divide the check by 10.
Yes.
And if people are listening to this, they don't understand why that's a problem, then that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Right? Because all you have to do is just move it, the decimal just one over. But we've been so dependent on it. So digital dementia is saying we're so dependent on technology that we're not using this technology anymore.
Man.
Like how many phone numbers did you know growing up?
That's the amazing question. I was thinking,
how many?
I don't know my wife and children's phone number right now, and I can tell you, I know my best friend's parents' phone number from when I was 7 years old.
Isn't that insane? And I'm not suggesting people, I don't want to memorize 500 phone numbers, but we've lost the ability to remember one. Because entrepreneurs, you want your freedom, right? You set your life for freedom, but if you can't get yourself to do the things, then you don't have freedom.
It's the rub.
Right? Exactly.
It's the rub.
And and that's the thing, that's the paradox. If you just do the easy things in life, you procrastinate, you put things off, right? Then life is hard. But if you do the hard things in life, life becomes easy.
Wow, so good.
And because you're building those muscles. And what I'm suggesting is mental fitness is as important as mental intelligence. The X is exercise. Exercise. And here's the thing, physical exercise, good for your brain. We know this across the board.
Physical exercise, good for the brain.
But so people who are more mentally, who work out, they're more mentally fit. Right, they do better on focus, mental acuity, memory tests. They create, when you exercise, you create brain-derived neurotropic factors, which is like B, and F, fertilizer for the brain, which promotes neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, new brain cells, new connective. People say like when they listen to your show, if they're doing on an elliptical, something rhythmic, or they're going for a walk, they'll retain it better.
Wow.
Right, which is so powerful just in being creative, going for walks. Like Steve Jobs, all his meetings were walking meetings,
that's right?
Because that's when all the creativity is coming out. So movement, because we live in such a sedentary environment.
Is that what you mean by learning is state-driven too?
Exactly, because movement changes your state. Your physiology affects your psychology. And we live in a culture where sitting is the new smoking. We've all heard this, and we're not moving. The primary reason why you have a brain is to control your movement. People don't realize that. Number one reason you have a brain. And as your body moves, your brain grooves. As your body moves, your brain grooves. Even the episode I did on morning routine, the 11 things I do every single morning, my routine is basically focused around jump-starting your brain. The science of momentum.
Can we say one thing about that where we both agree, and you know the reasons better than I? We're both big, don't check your phone for a window of time. Just, I know we're going to sidetrack here, but this is a road worth going down just for 30 seconds. Tell them what you think about that when they wake up.
And I know you're an advocate for this also, that if you want to win the day, you got to win that first half an hour, hour of the day, right? But the worst thing you could do, everybody, should, has their to-do list, you should have a not to-do list. And the top thing, that's what successful people do. Because that's the thing, as you become more successful, there's this opportunity stress, right? You get more and more invitations to do more and more things. So you have to say no to good so you can say yes to great. And what helps is having a not to-do list. And on top of the not to-do list, I would suggest don't touch your phone the first half an hour or an hour a day, and the last half an hour or an hour a day. Why? Because when you wake up first thing in the morning, from a brain reason, you're in this alpha theta state. You're extremely suggestible. That's when you're most creative, right? And you're incredibly suggestible. And if you pick up your phone, you're rewiring your brain for a number of things. Number one, you're training it for distraction. Every dopamine, like every like, share, comment, cat video, gives you a dopamine flood, and you wonder why you can't focus because you're trained to be distracted. Number two, by the way, on my show I had Dr. BJ Fogg, and he runs the Influence Persuasion Lab in Stanford University. And one of his students co-founded Instagram. The average person, I read recently, the average person opens up Instagram 150 times a day. So it's addictive, right? And if you're picking up, here's the thing I have with technology. When you pick it up out of habit, like not for purpose, but just out of habit, technology is a tool you're supposed to use.
It's
right?
using you.
Like exactly. And when technology is using you, who becomes a tool?
Wow.
Right?
That's so true, brother.
We become the tool. And here's so number one, you don't pick up your phone first thing, it trains you to be distracted. Number two, when you're in that pressural state, is what you talk about. It trains you to be reactive.
Correct.
It trains you to be reactive. All of a sudden, you get one email, one voicemail message, it ruins your day, and we've all had that. It just, you're fighting fires and you're on the defense. How can you build an incredible day with vision and leadership if you're just reacting? O in max out stands for observation. A lot of people say, I have a horrible memory, and they blame their retention. It's not your retention, it's your attention. I got the story I tell is
come on, that was
the
great.
second time I got to meet President Bill Clinton, and regardless of people's political ideology, everyone would agree he's got a lot of charisma. He's a great connector, a great communicator.
Absolutely.
What people don't know, he's got an incredible memory. Incredible memory. The first time I met him was very, very brief, but the second time he remembered my name, and I was like, okay. He was fed that by security. And then he remembered our last conversation. I was like, nobody was there. He definitely remembers this. And I was like, I'm the memory guy. How do you do this? What memory technique are you using? Because I believe genius leaves clues. And he tells me these stories about his grandfather in Arkansas in the living room, telling the grandkids all these stories, but he would do something different. Afterwards, he would quiz every single one of them to see if they're really paying attention. And I was like, wow, that's really, he went deep in that rabbit hole. And I would notice when he was explaining this to me, we're at a fundraiser, it's 2,000 people, and I was sitting right next to him at dinner. And it was like me, Forrest Whitaker, who won the Academy Award, Richard Branson, Ashton Kutcher, Ashton Kutcher's twin brother. I put this on Facebook.
I've seen that.
Crazy.
Pictures.
But I was like this, when he's talking to me, he's like, there's a lot more important people in that room, certainly at that table, but I feel like I'm the only one, Ed. And this is a quality that you have. I can feel this because I believe, you go to events, you were talking about remembering names, and they're looking over your shoulder. And who else is important in this room? And and everyone feels, especially women, they feel like when your attention goes somewhere else, they know it right away. Or if it's not being distracted outside, they're not paying attention because what are they doing? They're not listening. They're waiting for their turn to speak, or they're thinking how they're going to respond. Right? Another habit of highly effective people: seek first to understand, then to be understood. Most people, they want to be understood, and they're thinking about all that, and they're not
so powerful.
And they're not interested. They're just trying to be interesting.
Oh my gosh. They're trying to be interesting. They're not interested. That's powerful. Let's just slow that down a little bit. The people whose company I enjoy the most, who are some of the most influential people I've ever met, have that exact skill set that you just described. They're less interested in being interesting, and they are more interested in you. That is 100,000% true.
And Ed, just an exclamation mark, they're present with you. You know what I mean? Like you are. Since I walked through this door, you're there, and that's a trained skill. Listen, if you write the word "listen" on your phone or just in your notes, and then scramble the letters, it spells another word perfectly. It spells the word "silent." And most people, they can't They're not silent. They're talking to themselves and they're distracting. And if you're talking to yourself and listening to a new person talk, you can't listen to two conversations at once. You can't multitask. And by the way, finally the T in max out, I would say teach.
Yeah.
You know, intent matters. Intent matters. And what I would suggest everybody do, and I would challenge everyone who's listening to do this, because with challenge comes the change that you need, right? I would challenge everybody who's listening, if you're really serious, to use this and not just be like, oh, that was an entertaining show. I would say, think about somebody you wish was listening to this right now. And let's say you had to teach them tomorrow, or teach them, or give a TED presentation on Monday about the things. If you were to learn with the intention of teaching, would you focus better? Would you take better notes? Would you ask better questions on social media? Right? You would own that information. And so when you teach something,
My gosh,
you get to
so
learn it
good,
twice.
brother. It's
When
so
you
good.
teach something, you get to learn it twice. Because when you teach it, you own it. It becomes you. You're not using their words, you're using your words, and
Yes.
it becomes, you know, who you are.
About 20 years ago, I got into the space of teaching people. And so since that time, everything I've listened to related to these topics, everything I've read, every seminar I've attended was with the intention to teach it.
That's beautiful.
It's exactly what you just said. So I'm getting a double whammy every single time on all of these today. And having you here, I'm listening with the intent to teach these things.
And you because it becomes you, and then that's a double benefit, double whammy, because why learn anything? Number one, so you could benefit from it, but why learn it also? So people you care about can benefit too. I always believe is you learn to earn to return.
Oh, that's so good.
You learn, and then with the learning comes earning, and then you could return. You could pay it forward.
That's brilliant.
Let me address one thing about IQ, because I believe there's a myth that IQ is, I don't think it has the value that people give to it. The IQ, the two issues I have with IQ is, number one, it's saying that when you take this test, whether you're 6 or 60, it's going to be the same and it's fixed. And I do not believe that.
We've proven that that's
Right.
not true. You
and
can
I
study.
literally could show anybody how to do better on it, because it's just how to learn things, right? So I could show people how to game that. But the other thing is, I don't think IQ is an accurate measure of intelligence, because even when you look at standardized tests, you know, when we grew up, we took the SATs, right? And what was that? Verbal and mathematical. Now, that test was like everything. It was like how you go to college and get a good job
Define
and
your
everything
existence
else like
at
that,
age,
right?
yeah. My
And-
son's studying right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, that measures verbal intelligence and mathematical intelligence. It's important, but it's also saying like that's all that's important.
Right.
And there's this theory out of Harvard called multiple intelligence theory by Howard Gardner, saying there are way more intelligences.
Sure.
Right? And so what about visual spatial intelligence? People who are great artists or architects, right? Or like the visual spatial, graphic designers, right? That's just as important as anything else, right? So what it's saying is you could improve this, and there are other intelligence that are equally
That's what you said earlier about there being multiple geniuses.
Exactly.
LeBron James' genius is
And that-
different
so-
than Steve Jobs' genius.
Exactly.
They're
So-
both geniuses. I think there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of types of intelligence and genius. Because we all meet magic people all the time.
Yeah.
And what makes you interesting and special is that's your magic. It's different than somebody else's.
And I always do believe there's a method behind the magic. And you know, my life's work is seeing somebody who exhibits that and finding out that, hey, this is also available because we can learn this.
It's a skill.
Because when did you learn interpersonal intelligence? When in school do they teach that?
Right. I wasn't,
Right?
certainly wasn't born with
And
it.
here's the question people say about their kids, about themselves, about their team. It's like how smart they are. They want to know how smart somebody is, but that's the wrong question. Remember, questions are the answer. It's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart.
Oh gosh, that's so good.
It's not how smart your kids are, your team is, or anybody else. It's how are you smart, because you're right, there are multiple intelligence, there are multiple ways you could be a genius.
That's brilliant. I want to share something with you. I think one of mine is that I am present with people.
Yeah.
And I do observe people. And so it's really interesting, because I think that's one of the things that I love about doing the show. And it was fascinating because I never gave any thought as to where that came from, because I mean, your brain brilliance comes from the fact that you had this damaged brain as a child. Yet it's one of your great gifts and one of the great things you're intelligent at, one of your geniuses. And so this weekend somebody had asked me, why do you think, like on your show, or even we were at a dinner, you're so present, you're listening. Where do you think that comes from? And I didn't know. I thought about it, and I said, I'm not sure, but You know, it's interesting. My dad's sober 30 years now, but when I was a little boy, my dad had a drinking problem. And I never knew as a little boy which dad was going to come through the front door at night. And so unlike most kids who would run up and hug dad, I would observe dad when he came home. And so when dad walked through the front door, I'd look at his physiology, I'd look at his eyes, his face, his lips. I'd listen to what his first few words were. And I think since I was about a 4-year-old little boy, I was sort of, through that unfortunate circumstance in my family, I developed this intelligence of being present and really being with someone and understanding them and connecting with them and seeing where they really were. And it's ended up serving me as a 47-year-old man with you here today.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? And so for some of you listening, I would just say to you that sometimes some of your great genius could be coming from some of what you would think might be some of the more tragic events in your life or difficult events in your life. So just think about that.
And the self-talk also, when I said, at age 9, a teacher looked at me and said, that's the boy with the broken brain, for the whole class. And parents and adults have to be very careful because your external words become a child's internal words. Because every single time I did bad on a quiz, on a test, or not picked for a sports team, which was all the time, I would say, because I have the broken brain. That became my internal conversation. And I always tell people when they come to me and they say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I have a horrible memory. I always say, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limitations, you argue for your limits, they're yours, right? And here's the thing, your brain is like a supercomputer and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you programmed your supercomputer not to. They say the two most powerful words in the English language are also the smallest, I am. Because whatever you put after that, complete that sentence with, is going to determine your destination, your destiny.
I'm so glad you're saying this because this is typically said by you know what I mean, but motivational people or inspiring people. Now we've got a brain person, science telling you this is a fact.
So your identity is this. So let's say at a simple level, let's say people want to change their behavior, they want to stop procrastinating.
Yes.
But their identity is, I'm a procrastinator.
Yes.
Ooh, that's going to be a tough one.
Yep.
They want to change a behavior like, I want to stop smoking. But their identity is, I am a smoker. Wow,
right.
That's going to be a challenge,
Yes.
right? So here's the thing, the reason why I bring these distinctions up is because it takes the self-loathing or the judgment out of it because you don't have to, if you're not good at something, you could say you could address the level that's holding you back. Finally, below the level of behavior, and this is a big one, is a level of environment. Environment, because the behavior is you want to stop smoking, but the environment is you're around a lot of smokers. Because it's not, here's the thing, the people you spend time with is the people you become. You know this, you teach this, because your mirror neurons are always imitating what's around you. And that's the thing. So I want to sensitize you to, because often the people that hold us back are the people that love us the most.
You nailed it.
Because you know why? They're like, you're going to another event, you're listening to another podcast, why are you reading another book, spending all that money?
Right.
And they can have good intentions.
Sure.
Right? Because ultimately people are doing things for, generally I believe for good reasons.
Most people.
But they could be sincere, but they could be sincerely wrong.
Sincerely wrong. And I love I'm not this yet.
Right.
I also want to just repeat things that you say brilliant things one after the other. And so this idea that as a parent, your external dialogue becomes your child's internal dialogue is just riveting. I mean, it's riveting. And it's also true, I think, of leaders and companies too. Your external dialogue about your company or about that individual can become their internal dialogue. So what you're saying matters so deeply.
I feel like we have natural genius inside of us. And when this is aligned with this, when people talk about their mind and their body and their values and the habits, when they're all aligned, things happen naturally and they're not happen forced. And my goal for everybody who's watching and listening to this is that they're smarter than they think. It's just we weren't taught how to do these things. And when you're in congruence and in alignment, things happen. Your natural superpowers, if you will, come out organically and are not forced.
I think the vast majority of the people would say, I want to change something in my life, whether that be a habit or the external results in my life. I want to create a change. What would you say to that person? Where do they begin? What would be a step they could take? What would be a thought they would have in order to create change?
So the obvious thing to say is is lifelong learning. Commit yourself to lifelong learning, but that would be preaching to the choir. Because if someone's watching this right now or listening to this, you know, they are exceptional. And I applaud anyone who's made it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
What I would say is, self-love is not selfish. I feel like the biggest challenge people have in life is this fear that they're not enough.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what holds us back. And people talk about themselves in relationships, and I think we grow a lot in our intimate relationships because they're a mirror to us. And I also feel like you have to fall in love again with the person in the mirror who has been through so much, but is still standing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And when's the last time, you know, learning and love, I always wish people, you know, this year and their days be full of lots of life, lots of love, lots of laughter, and lots of learning. But I think they go hand in hand. Saying do the things that you would do for yourself, because I feel like we're only happy when two things happen. This would be my advice. Number one, you need the curiosity to know yourself, right? Because that's self-awareness. That's why we meditate, that's why we journal, that's why we listen to things. It's self-reflection. We have intimate relationships, we build businesses because they put us through tests and shows us who we really are. So have the curiosity to know yourself. But once you know yourself, you need the courage to be yourself.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's a different game.
Totally different game.
You know, and a lot of us, you know, when we're looking back again, we don't want to have those regrets.
Yes.
And the expectations of other people. And that's where I think people they limit themselves. So I would say my advice to somebody right now is to make sure you dedicate time every single day to self-care. You know, and really spend the time to not only know yourself, but give yourself permission to really be yourself. Finally, the T, I think is the most important one. When you're setting goals, make them your truth. Because so many people are setting goals and a vision that's not really theirs. They picked it up from their parents. You know, they're doctors because their parents were doctors, or they're picking up from the Joneses, or something outside. You know, know your truth and live from there.
Man, I didn't expect that to be your answer, and that was a wonderful, beautiful answer. I knew it would be incredible, but you went down a road there that's very interesting to me.